What is up YouTube? News Carl here. It's been a long time since I posted a video, and I should be tuning this thing right now, but I'll explain to you why this tune is nowhere near completed and why it's been taking me so long to do it. So let's get right into it. So I really didn't want to release a tuning video if I didn't at least have some sort of idea of what I was doing for tuning, which leads me to my next point, which is I was having some issues with this motor right around 11 to 1800 RPM, and it was stuttering really badly and I could not for the life of me figure out what it was. Now on top of that, I was having a misfire intermittently on cylinder 6. I tried to diagnose what was going on with my misfire, so I tried swapping coil packs, and it looks like it was still a cylinder 6 that was having the misfire, even though I swapped cylinders 1 and 6 for the coil packs. The spark plugs looked rich, but I didn't really see anything too crazy. The next thing that I thought it was I thought I was maybe burning too much oil and that was causing a misfire, but it seemed like my valve cover gasket was fine, so I didn't get any oil leaking into the spark plug well. So the next thing that I checked was fuel. So I tried swapping cylinders 1 and 6 for my fuel injectors, even though I really didn't think it was injectors. But that's when I found my problem, and it turns out I had a really bad vacuum leak on cylinder 6. So when I swapped the injectors, I kind of fixed that vacuum leak. So my tune that I was working on ended up being completely trashed, and now I had to start from scratch. Anyways, I swapped the injectors, had a massive fuel leak because now some stuff was like all over the place. So I remodified my bracket for the fuel rail just to allow for some sort of wiggle room, because apparently the M50 manifold is really sensitive to how you put the injectors inside of it or how you install it. So that was messed up, and I finally fixed that, and I thought I was all ready to go, and I started burning oil. So now I spent some time trying to diagnose what the heck is going on and why I'm burning oil. So I was pretty confident that the bottom mount was probably causing most of my turbo smoke issues. Oil was probably backing up into the turbo and causing it to smoke. It didn't smoke on startup, it really only smoked after it's been idling for a little bit. But that didn't really make sense to me. So I did do a couple things to try to diagnose it. The first thing I did was I took off my crankcase ventilation hose and I put my hand to block it to see if it would smoke more, and it did. So that led me to believe that it might be a crankcase ventilation issue. So what I did was I popped off my oil cap and I let this vent to atmosphere so I wasn't running through the catch can, and really it didn't make a change. So I knew that crankcase ventilation might be a factor, but I didn't really think it was causing my smoking issue. So what I tried next was lowering the oil level to the minimum, took out about a quart of oil, and lo and behold, it smokes less. So I've seeked some advice from a couple people on the Boosted E46 Facebook group, and I've gotten lots of different opinions, like you need to have your oil bung below, or you need to have your oil bung above the oil level, the oil's traveling uphill, the oil drain line needs to be like a bigger slope, and all sorts of stuff, you know. And let me explain to you how I came up with my potential solution. Now we do know that oil occupies whatever volume it's given in, assuming that, for example, this end of the hose is under atmospheric pressure, and this side is also under atmospheric pressure, which in this case, the oil level is pretty much the same. So no matter where the drain bung is in the oil pan, it should theoretically level out. The problem is, you can't assume that the space between the oil level and the drain line and the turbo is atmospheric. Now in the video I'm about to show you, notice where the oil level is at before the motor started and where it's at while the car is idling, and you'll notice how far up the oil level has risen. This is pretty much the same setup as me. It's an open crankcase ventilation and a drain line straight to the turbo. Now there's a couple things that could cause that to happen. It could be the drain line doesn't flow enough, which I mean it's a dash 10 line, it's gonna flow enough. Maybe surface tension, or the fact that oil can't displace fast enough because there's nothing to displace it with, such as air, because the drain line isn't vented to atmosphere. Also notice how when I add fluid, in this case water, but let's assume that it's oil, to the drain line portion of it, how it displaces back into the oil pan and eventually levels out. This is basically the same as the drain line that I have set up, except that it's not vented to atmosphere at the drain line. Now the way I plan on resolving this is by adding some sort of a tank or a sump that's going to bolt directly to the turbo, so the turbo basically dumps directly to atmosphere. I'm going to add a breather to the tank so that it vents to the engine bay, and then air can displace it whenever the oil wants to go back into the oil pan. So I have something like a tank with a bung, the line that goes to the oil pan, and then a breather so that air can displace it. It's kind of similar to a scavenge tank setup where you don't want the pump pulling vacuum, so you add a breather to like a sump, and that allows it to just suck oil and air. Except in this case, I'm not going to be running a scavenge pump yet. I'm assuming that this is going to work. If it doesn't work, then it's going to be easy to add a scavenge pump. That's how I kind of intend to design this. So without further ado, let's get started. So my game plan is to turn this 2-inch wide by 1/8 inch thick piece of flat aluminum. I'm going to cut it into sections so I can make a tank, probably just like a 4-inch long tank. Square that up, weld it, and then drill some holes at the top so that I can have the drain come down to the tank. One on the side that's going to go towards the oil pan, and I'll put a line off of that. I also have this extended oil drain, and I plan to cut it as high as possible so that the tank clears the turbine and the compressor housing, and then I'm going to use this threaded end as my return to the oil pan. And I bought 2 of these and bungs just in case. I'm probably only going to use one, and I'm going to use this as my breather. So this is my existing oil drain, where this side would come off of the turbo and this would go into the oil pan. And what I think I'm going to do, so from the drain flange, instead of having this AN line, I'm going to replace it with this little tank. I'm probably going to have it run like that. So this would be the compressor side and this would be the turbine side. I would have it drain somewhere right there, and then I'd probably put the AN line like right here, right at the bottom. That's going to shoot straight to the bung on the oil pan. So this is the tank so far, pretty much the way I have it set up. If you think of this as the front of the car, obviously this is where the turbo drain is. Have a little bit offset, and the way I kind of plan to have this will work, I'm going to have a port right here, like right in the center for the drain to the oil pan, which is going to be kind of close to the AN line coming from the bung on the oil pan, but we'll figure that out later. And then on this side I'll have the breather. So I gotta get this mocked up and see how it fits. The way I plan to have this work, obviously this is draining into a tank that's vented to atmosphere. When oil sloshes towards the passenger side of the car, so under left-hand turns, I'm hoping that because I have the breather on this side, oil is going to flow into the breather rather than back into the turbo drain. And then obviously if, say for example, I'm making a right turn, so oil sloshing to the left side, it's going to drain into the oil pan. So I have everything drilled and pretty much ready to go. I just gotta get prepped and let's get this welded up. So this is pretty much the finished tank. I have my bung as low as possible so I can, well, if this doesn't work, then this makes sense for the scavenge pump, but this makes it line up with my current bung on the oil pan as best as it could. And then on the other side, as high as possible, I have another bung that I'm going to run into the engine bay. Obviously I have a drain that bolts to the turbo. I'll probably need some new hardware for the flange so I can actually install it, because as of right now the socket head bolts won't fit, or more so I won't be able to tighten it. I also have my new drain line and it'll be just like that. And since this piece of braided line is really short, I'm probably going to fiddle around with it to try to get the length as perfect as possible. As you can see, there is a little bit of a gap right there, so I have some room to tighten it, but I really want to get this line as perfect as I can, so that I don't really stress out this box too much. And we got issues. I can't fit a fitting there. So I thought I'd be able to fit a fitting right above the control arm, but doesn't clear. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these fittings and one of these plugs. I'm going to plug my bolt-in -10 AN bung, and then I'm going to drill a hole, weld this on, and then hopefully I'll have enough clearance to clear my lower control arm. See how it goes. Alright, so here it is, modified, ready to go. Unfortunately, I have this really ugly and useless bung now with cap. I would take it off, but I have no way of taking the nut on the backside off, so I just gotta leave it like that. And then this is my barb. Welds aren't really the prettiest because I messed up on my part and I didn't really do a good job of cleaning it. So it is what it is. It should work, but we gotta test it out and see. So let's get this on and then we'll test it when it's not late at night, because I don't want my neighbors to hate me. Alright, so she's mounted up, pardon the light, but as you can see I have my line coming from that weld-on fitting zip tied to the control arm. I'm not really too concerned about that. And then I'm having it come right there going into the engine bay, and then I have it terminate right here. This is very temporary. I'm actually thinking about redoing my catch can, maybe doing something right here. We'll see how that goes. I haven't really planned that out yet, but this is where it's going to sit for now. And then here's how it looks from under the car. You can see it right there. That's the tank, and then you have the line that's going to the oil pan. It is sloping upward quite a bit, but like I explained earlier, hopefully that's going to still drain properly since I have a breather now. We'll see how it goes. Alright, it's time. Let's see if all my modifications work. Fingers crossed that it does, because if it doesn't, it's back to the drawing board, back to square one, and waiting on parts again. Please, no smoke. I don't want no smoke. Not seeing any leaks so far. Square one it is.